I was talking with my daughter, who's 11, and she said something that helped me to understand singular plurality. She said that it isn't okay to try to make everybody the same, that we should celebrate each other's differences. And coming from a little kid, I thought about that in this context of that was the goal of residential schools, was to erase Indigenous identity, to erase culture and language, and make First Nations assimilate. Earlier this year, the First Nation in Kamloops announced 215 unmarked graves at the residential school. And that has led to the discovery of more and more unmarked graves at residential schools across this country. And what we've seen in the response to that is a country that is finally willing, or maybe ready, to reckon with the truth of our colonial history. For too long, Canada has had this humble exceptionalism where we project an image to the world of a multicultural, welcoming society. But the truth remains that with the Indian Act, Indigenous people in Canada are still, to this day, governed by a different set of legislation than every other Canadian. Art, music, film, dance, writing, they all have the power to make us think and feel differently. And that's why an event like the Frankfurt Book Fair is so important, because it brings together people from all parts of the world. It brings together all of those different art forms from all over the world to share with each other and take back. And that's what the witness blanket is. It's an artwork that stands as a record of truth, as a record of the collective and individual experiences of residential school survivors in Canada. And this film, picking up the pieces, the making of the witness blanket, shares those stories through the words of survivors. In my culture, when we come together in ceremony, we call witnesses. Each witness has the responsibility to listen and share what they see and hear. As you watch this documentary, I ask that each of you bear witness. My name is Carey Newman. My traditional name is High Elf Kingame. On my father's side, I am Kwagulth and Coast Salish. On my mother's side, I am English, Irish, and Scottish. My father was born in Alert Bay, British Columbia. At age 7, he was taken to residential school. I've always felt conflicted about my experience growing up in Canada. This country provided one side of my family the opportunity of a better life. At the same time, colonization has damaged generations of my indigenous relatives. Between 1870 and 1996, more than 150,000 indigenous children were taken from their families and sent to residential schools. Their identities were stolen, cultures extinguished. They were undernourished, neglected, and often abused. There were more than 6,000 confirmed deaths. Did your school have a graveyard? For years, I wondered what could I do. Every idea I had was too small. But when I thought of traveling across Canada and collecting a piece from every residential school, my answer became the witness blanket.
What was done, Jesus ka sala laun na khwashala wakyahan.
This is to all whoever attended residential school. All the kids, you know, I still call them kids because that's my memory of them when I left there, who were all kids. This is to all the kids who all attended residential school wherever in the whole world.
Polly and I are going to have a chance to say something about whatever we're doing here.
You definitely can say whatever you want to say.
I'm not sure whether we've started the process now or we're going to wait until we get in there.
We can start it now.
I'm Stanley Hunt. I'm 75 years old, going on to 76. I spent 10 years in St. Michael's here, so I have a fair understanding of some of the stories and issues that surround the residential school. And to the disbelievers, I think you should sit down and really think about what you've heard, because it's all true. All our social issues that we have on the reserve here and other reserves all stem from here. Most of the people that I went to school with here, they've all passed away. Back in 1985, when the Goldthorpe Inquiry came through here, the life expectancy of our guys was 35 years old. So most of my friends, relatives, fellow students, they all passed on. Both our cemeteries are full of our young people. I've never really said anything to anybody about my own experiences. I realized very early in my time after I left here, I could not afford to let this thing stop me to do things. I've done all kinds of things with my life, with my family, and we put the residential school stuff behind us. So if I'm going to tell you a story about the way things are, and hundreds and hundreds of us are telling you a story, I'd like the government to say, we'll do something about it. It's like the weather. You talk about it, but nothing happens. My own story started right at the doorstep, right there. This is where I was speaking our language there when I first came with Herbie Smith and Art Vigus. The chapel was there, and the principal's office was behind me here. And I could hear the principal talking to the staff member. He says, we're going to make an example of these little assholes. I hate to say it to you guys, but I've got scars on my rear end from that. I knelt down on the floor, they took your pants and shorts down and just literally beat you. But after about 3 or 4 hits in the back, Your rear end just stung, so it didn't hurt after that. So just keep hitting me. So through my whole life stay in St. Michael's, I never prayed so much, and most of my prayers was to get out of here.
It was necessary to steal, to eat. And then the food that they ate you was exactly what it was slop. So we used to have porridge that had maggots in there. We used to have to eat it. Same with the dessert, apples, oranges, bananas was rotten. And that's how we lived in there.
It was divided here. All the girls sat on this side, and the boys sat on this side here. And some of the girls that worked in the kitchen, because they knew that you weren't eating properly, and some of them, with the type of tables we had, they put 3 or 4 slices of bread under the table and put a knife there to hold it, so that during your meal, you could reach under the table to get extra bread. And that, so.
They should have at least sold this to us 5 times.
Yeah.
And this is my nephew Dennis, my son. He lived with me most of his, but he was here and he has big issues with this place. Big, he's a gentleman, like he's so gentle when he's sober.
I spent 6 years in this place. I managed to really try and cope with all the issues that I went through in here. And I let a lot of stuff go. But once in a while, things will resurface.
Dennis is real struggling with it. Still today, even after he went to a lawyer. But at least you've come in here and said a few things.
One of the main things that happened to me is that I was deprived of my dad. When I left residential school, my dad died. Took everything with him, his knowledge. What I'm learning now in our culture, I should have knew when I was 10 or 12 years old, you know. Deep inside me, I am very angry, you know. My vocabulary is the F word, you know, for just about 3/4 of the things that happened in my life. You know, I hate the white man. I hate people of authority. I hate cops. I hate the welfare system, because they still do what they did to us then, taking away kids. I'm sorry I have to say that, but that's just me. That's what's inside me. There were a lot of sad times, like everyone else.
I guess one of the things that I've often said to different people that have mentioned things like, you know, get over it, happened a long time ago. Life doesn't work that way.
No.
You know, if horrible things happen to you, you never get over it. But the thing is, you adjust your life so that you can live within whatever happened to you. Mm-hmm. And basically that's what I've done there. I don't allow this place to hamper what I'm doing or whatever my plans are. So the building, I can come in and out of here reasonably well, but it's still pissing me off. Mm-hmm. So.
The thing about building something that's never been built before, something that has no blueprint, is that you have to be ready to learn from your mistakes. You have to be ready to try anything, change everything, and then try it all over again. The hope is that eventually you find a way. But how do you untangle the problem of assembling solid objects into something that moves and sways like a blanket? In my mind, it was like a beaded bracelet. We tried to drill through each shape so that we could thread them onto steel rods or cable. We tried copper spacers, pressure fittings, screws and glue. Eventually, we found a combination of brad staples and epoxy that would hold the cedar pieces together. At the time, we thought we had everything figured out. And although we celebrated that taste of success, it turned out to be just the first of many challenges.
Hi Rosie, nice to have you joining me on North Wing today.
Thanks for having me.
Now to start us off, maybe you can tell me what it is that you're doing.
Sure, so we're working with a Kwagyouth and Salish artist who's creating a large-scale art installation to commemorate the residential school era. So what we're doing is traveling across Canada and connecting with communities all over the country to collect these pieces. And so that's what our team is doing up in Inuvik this week, is to collect additional pieces for the installation.
Okay.
Some awesome country, man. Can't beat it. This is like paradise.
We just arrived in Inuvik yesterday, but we've had a really warm reception from the community, and everyone has been really helpful in wanting to connect with us and point us in the right direction of who we should talk to or work with us to actually collect pieces.
But the conditions as well that people survived it was extreme. So,
you know, you're away from your parents for 3 years is a long time.
Because we had no opportunity at all to know. I thought, oh, just another residential school, and no way, no how, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Education authorities came and said the children need to go to the hostel. You know, so our poor parents, what they went through. Yeah.
They didn't have a choice back then.
No, it was the law. Why didn't Dad fight? Why didn't he, you know? And she said, Lucy, this was the choice he was given. I went to Grolier Hall in 1974. I was 6 years old, and I lived there for 8 years.
Canada is a big country, and there's lots of ground to cover, and so we're not going to get everywhere, but we still want to make it as easy as possible for people to participate in the project.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thanks for stopping by, and best of luck on the rest of your journey.
As much as I needed an open mind when planning and designing the blanket, Rosie and Merrick needed open hearts when collecting the pieces. We didn't necessarily recognize it at the time, but we weren't just out there gathering objects. We were gathering pieces of a history, fragments of a disappearing narrative, each one a silent witness to the residential school story.
My first day was the saddest day of my life. Mom and Dad weren't there. I couldn't talk to my brother. I couldn't talk to my sisters. I couldn't talk to the strangers that are at my age, 8, 9 years old, and not knowing anybody. And I wasn't the only one crying, and there's lots of kids crying, wanting to go home, not tomorrow or next week, but right now. When I went to school, it was, you can't do that because you're an Indian. You're nothing but an Indian, you'll never be able to do it. There was no encouragement. I am caught between two cultures, the non-native culture and the native culture. We're in a mess. I wish, number one, for more people to understand what happened at these residential schools. And I wish for the people who were abused mentally, physically, can learn to heal and learn to forgive. They'll never forget, but they can forgive.
Yeah, so this is Old Sun. It's now Old Sun Community College.
Sometimes I wonder if that's Old Sun.
Yeah.
I knew it was a college, but
yeah.
The same kind of.
They've covered the little round. Yeah, they were just round pillars, but they've been covered, and this looks so much different now. Yeah. Okay. And this is the boys' side, on the boys' playroom. It's similar to the girls' side.
Did the students have to work in the laundry room?
Yeah. Yeah, this was the junior girls' dorm. And I remember, oh my goodness. These houses never, well, of course, these were just built recently. But way in the distance over there is where I live. I live. It's about 12 miles from here, and you know, because well, for me, one of my memories is being so lonely, you know, coming from a loving home and then to be placed here. I know there were nights I used to look out and look way in the distance, wishing I was home. So I guess it never really goes away that, you know, you think you're over it, but when you're looking at these things, it brings back those memories of, like, as a young child, like I mean, there were people that were even younger than me, but I was 7 when I was brought here, and I didn't want to be here. Yeah, and I guess being in this room brings back that lonely feeling, you know, wishing I was home and just being with my family. And I know I've heard some former former staff saying we were one big happy family, but we weren't. Like, I was here with my older brothers and sisters, and I couldn't even be with them, you know. Even the boys, we couldn't even talk to the boys. I'd sneak a smile at my brothers if I met them in the hallway, but I couldn't even. We weren't a family, you know. That's, yeah. That was hard.
While I stayed close to home in the studio, planning and figuring out how to fit everything together, Rosie and Merrick were out there traveling the country, meeting people, hearing stories, collecting pieces. I still wish I could have been there with them, experiencing everything firsthand.
I started drinking at 12, 13, steal alcohol from the staff.
And it amounted to as a prison.
You have to fight your way through, you know, in order to survive. You develop survival skills.
A lot of times I got whacked with that yardstick.
Today I'm speaking an imitation language, a foreign language. We became the lowest class citizen in our country.
To remember what happened there, this will never, never happen to our people again.
This right here.
On the trail, yeah.
Wow.
Just go in here and then you can just...
That's what I would suggest about survivors. They're still here amongst us, and what we heard yesterday is going to last me a lifetime. And it's going to give me the empowerment to understand what my parents had engaged into during their childhood years and what had been taken from them.
There it is.
Wow.
I'd say it doesn't have a date, but I'll find a date out. We do have it on file.
That's an amazing picture.
Look at that. Look at that.
Oh my gosh, that's a really interesting image.
Look at that sea land. That's in...
Those poles, it's like, that's just the matching design of every cafeteria I've seen in BC and Alberta for all of the schools.
Giving back. That was the goal for the Aboriginal Healing Foundation, and I think that's our goal within our own souls as Aboriginal people, is to reclaim that truth. Because in all of Canada, they never have seen the truth of First Nations people. It's going to change. It's got to change.
Out of 46 people in my family, 43 of them went to residential school, Cooper Island. He was graduating that year. He phoned up my mom and asked them if they were coming up to his graduation, and Mom said yes, and then he asked to talk to me. She gave me the phone, and he says, I can't wait to get out of this hellhole. I'm gonna tell everything. And next thing I know, he's saying, I gotta go, and the phone went click. We were getting phone calls every 15 minutes. They kept asking for Mom and Dad, and we told them that they weren't home yet, Finally, he phoned back and told my mom that he was dead. And they said that he was hanging in the gym.
Was there ever any kind of further explanation from the school or the church around what happened? Or?
No, they wouldn't talk about it after that. And my mom asked him what happened to her son, and he turned around and looked at her and just yelled at her, you know, you've got all the information already, and you know, like my mom just about collapsed. My sister and I held her up. I can't believe that they would do something like that.
That's a really hard story to share, and I can't imagine that having that conversation with him and thinking that it was going to be graduation and he was coming home, and
yeah, he only had a few more days left there. I just never believed. I still don't. He's only 14.
Let's go up to the school site. This is where the school sat, right here, right up here. They really never took any responsibility at all. That's an ambition, I suppose, or a goal that hopefully we'll be able to get to, you know, at some time. People that went to this school raised their kids like they were residential school supervisors because they didn't know what else to do. Now we've got a generation that doesn't know. I can look at it. I can look at it and say, that's from my residential school experience, but the next generation can't say that. We need to have an education that now is experience. I mean, you know, if it was done right, go in and take somebody's kids away from them and just say, hold it. You make one more move, you're going to jail. Now get back in there and let them feel it, what it's like. Right. Give them freaking shit all the time. And they don't even know what for. Not because of anything they did or didn't do, but because they were who they are. Maybe then they'll start to understand what it is that we carry in our hearts. Mm-hmm. You know, the unfinished business of residential school, right? You know, to me it's like, come on, Canada, where's your pride? Look at what you did to the original people here. Bring down that horrible statistic, you know, in the jail. That's what I want to see. That's my measuring stick. How many kids are in the foster home? Yeah. That's my measuring stick. So we're working on it. I've lived here 30 years, and I've lived here intentionally. I never just randomly sort of dropped in here. I say something's got to be done about this horrible legacy that we've inherited here. Something's got to be done, and as long as I'm living here, I'm going to be constantly reminded of that and have it there in front of me to work on, you know. And for the future generations, I know now, it's not going to be a short term, it's going to be a way of life. We need to embrace our little kids now and raise them up in it, in love, not institutional supervision. And that's what I think now I gotta get healthy myself so that I don't carry the bitterness of my experience, but that I'm able to embrace the little ones with acceptance, kind and caring. You know, when I remember when I was 12 years old, I knew this from residential school experience. I knew 3 things at 12 years old. I was stupid, I was ugly, and I was going to hell. Those 3 things I knew for sure. Nothing else, everything else was sort of kind of mixed up and confusing, right? Stupid, ugly, and going to hell. That's what residential school did to me. That's the gift they left me with. Yeah. Well, I don't, you know, I'm not consumed by that self-esteem thing now, but I see it still alive and well, and it's not good, eh? I don't ever want any 12-year-old kid to be feeling like that, right? My kids don't know. I don't talk about it. I don't tell them what I would do when I was 12 years old. You know, it's a horror story. It's not pleasant, you know. For me, it's like those Blazo cans, you know, there's a time where you make the most use out of everything that's available to you, right? And that's what I've done with that residential school. And but that, you know, that's just a practical way of looking at it. The legacy of it needs to be dealt with. That's enough, eh?
and then grab your layer.
There were always challenges to overcome. One problem was figuring out how to include images and documents on the blanket. People had given us photographs and graduation certificates, yearbooks and letters. Aside from the fragile nature of most of these items, many people wanted their keepsakes returned to them. We digitized and saved them and began looking for a way to represent them on the blanket. It seemed like I was learning something new every step of the way. With close to 300 images to transfer, I started experimenting with different methods, and eventually, with the help of friends, came upon a process using clear acetate. Rosie and Lindsay did most of the transfers, and it was all about consistency and teamwork. Together they perfected the process and brought the mosaic sections of the witness blanket to life. While we were working away, I kept getting invitations for brunch from my mom. She wanted me to meet Jane and Robert, friends of hers who were interested in the project. I was completely immersed in the work and kept putting her off. But she was persistent, and eventually I came up for air. It was around then that I was trying to determine the best way to deal with mounting everything. And with time ticking away, I was kind of at an impasse. There were so many different items, and for the ones I couldn't fasten with screws or glue, I was a little bit lost. As it turns out, Jane is a professional textile conservator, and Robert builds exhibits for museums. It didn't matter if it were patches of fabric, bits of burnt wood, rusted nails or silver plates, hockey skates or piano keys. Together they had the methods to mount anything. But that was kind of the way it was with this project. Whenever there was a need, someone or something came along to fill it. Not only did we build the physical blanket, but we also managed to document the whole process, plan a national tour, and build a virtual blanket almost entirely out of goodwill and good timing. Family pitched in, friends gave their time, and my wife Elaine talked me through it all.
I went to Mission City after grade 8 to go to high school, so I was more of a renegade at the time, and then a bunch of us one day decided that we would go into the wine cellar, and they'd have two great big 45-gallon drums in the basement of the priest's house there, so there was a little hole about yay big, and a smaller person could crawl in. Well, we didn't go through. We got a young fellow that was small. He could crawl in here.
Came through to get the wine.
Yeah, and then we would stand on that end with all the bottles and stuff, and then hand it in. And he would fill them all up, and they were all right here, stored right around here somewhere.
It's crazy to put like
that was one small boy.
Put like an actual space and building and like perspective on that story, because we've heard it since I was a boy. What he would do is they'd get the wine out of there, and the small person would hand it out, and they'd run over here and roll the barrels down the hill, and then they'd go collect it down the hill.
You have little taps you put in, and we gathered up all the wine bottles we could and had them fill them all up and hand them out to us. I was in there singing away underneath the tree. That's where they found me.
Growing up, Dad didn't talk much about his time at residential school. But that story about drinking the holy wine always meant something special to me. It was a story about resilience, about not letting the worst things in life define you. What he doesn't say is that when it was noticed that wine was missing, all of the boys were lined up and told that if the guilty didn't come forward, everyone would suffer. My dad stepped forward, and to this day, when I hear that story, it fills me with a certain kind of pride. A little bit of the orchard, the kind of pride reserved for a child looking up to a parent. I think that's the missing piece. The moment I came up with the idea of the witness blanket, I knew that one day I would be right there in that orchard, cutting a branch in honor of my father.
Final stretch.
As I say this prayer, I ask the wind on eagle's wings to carry this prayer to Creator Great Spirit on behalf of all my people. Creator Great Spirit, as we gather here this morning, we say thank you. Thank you for all blessings, the blessing of Mother Earth, the blessing of family, the blessing of relatives, of friends in our walk on this earth. Creator Great Spirit, we thank you for the profound healing in the ceremony here as we acknowledge all our people affected by the residential schools across Canada. Bless each one as we remember those already gone. We pray for all our people that each one know compassion, kindness, caring, generosity, and strengthening of spirit through the works of everyone in making this witness blanket. Galakasla Heights Atitsusiam.
Okay, let's put Moisen down. Yeah. And then hold this one I'm up. dropping. Watch your hand.
Are the top ones on there?
Ready? Yeah, pull it towards you. Because she's got a...
When I recall the details from those final days of construction, it's like watching playback on a split screen. On one side, there is a frantic atmosphere with people coming and going, the sounds of voices and machines. Everything was happening, rushing forward with the anticipation of seeing it all come together for the first time. On the parallel screen, there is an almost transcendent calm, marked by quiet deliberation, as one by one we crossed off items from a checklist that existed only in my mind. It was as if life were moving at two different speeds, and there we were at the center of the storm, working together.
Where are you on now?
The team came to share an unspoken respect for the responsibility we had begun to carry along the way. We each had a moment where someone or something broke through and touched our souls, and we knew that we would never be quite the same.
I went to a few Truth and Reconciliation gatherings, the one in Vancouver. I think what really struck me, and it was your uncle's, actually, Carey, when he spoke, really hit home. It's not your uncle, and it's not the man who did it, but these people were created as a result of what happened to your uncle. And this is why this piece was born. So I don't know if you knew that.
The pieces on this blanket each represent a different story, a different person, a different place. Through the stories of a few, we begin to visualize the stories of them all. The idea was that these everyday objects would communicate in a different language, connecting each of us through our own memories and experience. That their presence would recall residential schools themselves, somehow making them more tangible. That the enduring spirit within these bits and parts would form something undeniable, a heartbeat that would gently and resolutely command our attention. In the tradition of my Salish ancestors, a blanket is gifted to uplift the spirit, protect the vulnerable, and honor the strong. This blanket is for the survivors, and for the children who never came home. For the dispossessed, the displaced, and the forgotten. For the parents who hold their stories deep inside, afraid of how the truth will affect their children. For those who are angry, those in pain, and those who are working to find a way through. For those who are bitter, and those who remember, and those who have spent a lifetime trying to forget. For the families who have lost their aunts and uncles and sisters and brothers and mothers and fathers and children. For those who have yet to learn to respect themselves for who they are and where they are from. For the communities that were broken, the languages and traditions that were taken. For our children, our children's children, and every generation to come. But from the very beginning, it was inspired by, and has always been, for my father. I've come to understand that truth comes before reconciliation, and that reconciliation is not about social repairs, like providing clean water and equal access to healthcare and education. Those are basic human rights. Reconciliation is about disrupting the colonial systems that created those problems in the first place. It's about respect for this land, and recognizing all humans who live in Canada as equal.